This video has been provided by ICMA, the International City County Management Association, and is funded through the U.S. Department of Energy's Solar Outreach Partnership. For more information, visit solaroutreach.org. Cincinnati, Ohio, home of the Reds and Bengals, may seem an unlikely place to find the largest urban solar array in the country. But in recent years, the city has become nationally recognized for sustainability, solar, and green economic development. Mark Fisher, who's with the Cincinnati Zoo, told us why many people thought solar wouldn't work in Ohio.
In Ohio, you have cheap power and crappy weather. Strike one, strike two. So we're 0-2 in the hole right out the bat, and we hit a grand slam.
The grand slam Mark referred to is the 1.6 megawatt solar canopy you can park beneath at the Cincinnati Zoo. Cincinnati's vision for solar started long before the installation at the zoo. In December of 2005, Mark Mallory became the mayor of Cincinnati. Mallory promised to change the tone at City Hall and revitalize the city with bold economic development initiatives. One of the top priorities was the greening of the city. Mayor Mallory hired Larry Falkin as director of the Office of Environment and Sustainability to address environmental issues.
The City of Cincinnati's sustainability initiative really began in 2007 when newly elected Mayor Mark Mallory signed the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. That was an initiative coming out of the U.S. Conference of Mayors at the time. We launched the process of creating what is now called the Green Cincinnati Plan. At the time, we were calling it a Climate Protection Action Plan. And the Climate Protection Action Plan, we had a steering committee composed of, a who's who of influential entities in Cincinnati. It was a really broad-based panel representing input from all segments of the community.
The mayor's directive was approved by City Council with a nearly unanimous vote. Charged with reducing regional greenhouse gas emissions while preserving economic development and transportation options, the steering committee went to work.
Ohio had an economic development strategy that was really focused on being able to contribute to the wind and solar supply chains, that we would not only install solar panels here, but we would build solar components.
The state Renewable Portfolio Standard was part of the economic development vision.
When they buy renewable energy, what they're actually buying is something called a renewable energy credit, a REC, and the REC is simply a legal instrument that represents the green attributes, the sustainable attributes of power that has come from a sustainable source.
SRECs, or Solar Renewable Energy Credits, were part of the power purchase agreement that helped make the zoo installation a reality. Here's Mark Fisher.
In Ohio, there's a very specific carve-out for solar. What that's done is that creates a market for these SRECs. So the zoo bid out a 2-year generation contract for our normal power and coupled it with a 10-year SREC for this array.
Solar projects in Cincinnati utilize a variety of incentives and programs. Utility incentives, federal grants, and PPAs are just a few. So far, the city has installed solar on 23 government properties.
One of the things that we've done is entered into a solar power purchase agreement, which is an agreement with a vendor, in this case Solar Power and Light, who has agreed to spend their money to put solar panels on the roofs of city facilities. From the perspective of the city, it's a good deal because we're not putting up any of the cash, we're not taking any of the risk, we're simply buying electricity, and we would have bought electricity anyway, but we've got solar panels on the roofs of our buildings, and we've got renewable energy fueling a portion of our energy needs.
Cincinnati's solar market, fueled in part by SRECs and mandated by Ohio's Renewable Portfolio Standard, changed in June of 2014 when Ohio became the first state to freeze its RPS.
Recently, the Ohio State Legislature passed a law that changes the Renewable Portfolio Standard, that reduces the obligation of utilities to buy renewable energy credits. That will reduce the value of RECs in Ohio and will make it harder to make solar deals profitable.
That said, the folks in Cincinnati believe they'll be able to continue to install solar using a number of innovative programs.
One of the tools that the city of Cincinnati has recently adopted is something called PACE financing. PACE is an acronym that stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. We're going to use municipal bonds. We're going to use bond funds raised by a local governmental entity to finance energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements in private sector buildings so that the building owner doesn't have to put up any cash up front. The way we pay back those public bonds and the way we make sure that this program won't cost local government anything is we put a special tax assessment on the property that we're improving. So if I'm spending $1 million on energy efficiency improvements at a particular building, I will put a special property tax assessment on that building so that over 20 years, I, the municipality, can collect back that money plus interest, use that money to pay off the bonds. And so the building owner gets his building or her building fixed up at no upfront cost, pays for it over time at municipal bond rates, which are very advantageous interest rates. Now, PACE financing is a little bit complicated. It needs to be a partnership. So in Cincinnati, what that looks like is we have a nonprofit organization, the Greater Cincinnati Energy Alliance, that is the program administrator. They identify good projects, do the work to make sure that the cash flows are there, that the engineering is sound. They partner with the Port of Cincinnati Development Authority. The Port Authority is the one that actually sells the bonds and administers the financing. And then city government is a partner in this operation because we're the ones that have taxing authority to be able to put the special tax assessment on the property and collect the funds that goes to the Port Authority to pay off the bonds.
We have been fortunate to formally move the first project through the city, which has allowed us to create the Southwest Ohio's first Energy Special Improvement District, which is Ohio's way of saying a PACE district. We're getting to a point where we have 4 or 5 projects that are very near being ready to go, and we're focused in the next 3 or 4 months on moving those through to completion.
One of the first projects to take advantage of PACE financing is the city's new police station, which is slated to be a LEED Platinum net zero energy building, with solar very much a part of the design.
LEED Platinum is the highest level of sustainable green building. Net zero energy means that the building generates as much electricity as it uses, that the city will have no utility bills going forward for the operation of that building. Then the question is, okay, if we want to do net zero energy, how can we afford it? And PACE is a tool by which we can use bond funds up front, place a tax assessment on our police station for the next 20 years to pay off those bonds. Now, it's interesting that the city government is a tax-exempt entity, so we don't typically pay property tax, but we can volunteer for a tax assessment even though we're tax-exempt. And so we'll volunteer for this tax assessment. We'll get a net zero energy building. We'll pay taxes for 20 years that are less than the utility bills we would have paid for 20 years. And then the building is all ours with no utility bills.
One of our emerging efforts that is coming right on the heels of getting solar out into the community is the development of a solar tax equity investment fund. It does require raising capital, both tax equity investors and debt investors. And at the same time, PACE and Solarize have given us a very good understanding of the solar market and of the gaps and of the needs that the solar market has. And one of the problems is that in our market in Southwest Ohio, and certainly the city of Cincinnati, There are very few examples of tax equity investment that allows solar projects to be able to take advantage of the 30% federal investment tax credit. Oftentimes we're talking about nonprofit organizations that don't have a tax appetite, and we're also oftentimes talking about small and medium-sized solar contractors that also don't have the tax appetite. And so when you have those two things at play, and you miss out on that 30% federal tax credit, you're not going to have a project that cash flows in many cases in Ohio today. And so at the same time, we as a nonprofit organization see an opportunity to be able to aggregate those smaller projects, put them into a warehouse facility, and be able to bring to bear the debt and equity investors necessary to create a third-party solution to owning those solar projects and being able to monetize that tax credit.
The city is also in the final stages of developing a residential solar rooftop initiative. The plan is to roll out the program in pilot form and target some of the 1,800 customers in the city that have already done energy efficiency work to see if they want to take the next step of investing in solar.